She refused to give up her seat and never expected the backlash to change her life forever. The subway car hummed with the familiar sounds of an early morning commute, the rustle of newspapers, soft murmurs of conversation, and the rhythmic screech of wheels against metal tracks. It was a typical weekday morning in Washington, D.C., and DuPont Circle Station was buzzing with people, all rushing to get to their destinations. Among the sea of commuters was 14-year-old Layla, her dark curly hair tied back in a ponytail, and her school backpack slung over one shoulder. She was just another face in the crowd, blending seamlessly into the stream of people boarding the train. To anyone observing, she looked like an ordinary student heading to school, earbuds dangling from her pocket, a calm expression on her face. But what Layla didn't know was that this ordinary morning would become anything but. It would turn her into the center of a moment that no one in that subway car would forget. The train's doors slid open with a chime, and Layla stepped inside. Her eyes scanned the crowded car, searching for an empty seat. She spotted one, but it wasn't entirely free. The space was occupied by an oversized purse, deliberately placed there by a woman in her late 40s. The woman sat stiffly next to the bag, her designer sunglasses resting atop her carefully styled hair, exuding an air of entitlement. Layla approached her politely. "Excuse me, Mum, may I sit here?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. The woman barely glanced up, her eyes flicking dismissively over Layla. "It's taken," she snapped, pulling the purse closer as though guarding it from an invisible threat. Layla hesitated for a moment, her brow furrowing in confusion. "There's no one sitting here," she said gently, her tone still respectful. The woman's expression hardened. She leaned back in her seat, her voice sharp and impatient. "I said it's taken. Find another seat." A tense silence spread through the subway car. Passengers exchanged awkward glances, their eyes darting between Layla and the woman. Some lowered their heads, pretending not to notice, while others watched with quiet curiosity. Layla's cheeks flushed, but she didn't move. It wasn't just about the seat anymore, it was about something bigger. Default text moment hung heavy in the air, charged with unspoken tension. Then, from a few seats away, a man in his early 30s spoke up. "What's the problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. He looked directly at the woman, his tone making it clear that he expected an answer. The woman's irritation flared as she turned to face him. "The problem is that I don't want her sitting here, that's my choice. This is my space." Her words were clipped and defensive, but they carried an undeniable air of privilege. The man raised an eyebrow. "It's a public seat," he said evenly. And she asked politely. Layla's quiet resolve grew stronger with the man's support. She took a deep breath, standing her ground. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble," she said softly, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I just need a place to sit." Another voice joined in, this time from a woman in scrubs who had been observing silently. "It's not about the seat anymore," she said, her tone filled with quiet authority. "It's about respect." The woman with the purse looked around, realizing that the tide was turning against her. Passengers were no longer pretending not to notice. Instead, they were watching her with disapproving eyes. One young man across the aisle took out his phone and began recording. "What are you doing?" the woman demanded, her voice rising in indignation. Capturing the moment, he replied calmly, "People should see this." The train rattled to the next stop, but the energy in the car remained tense and electric. As new passengers boarded, the story told in whispers and glances spread like wildfire. The woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she still refused to move her bag. Layla stood her ground, silent but unwavering. Finally, a woman in a business suit stood up from her seat a few rows down. "Here," she said, gesturing to Layla, "take my seat. You deserve better than this." Layla smiled gratefully and took the seat, but the confrontation wasn't over. The man with the phone continued recording, narrating quietly for the benefit of whoever would later watch the video. "This is what happens when someone stands up for themselves," he said. "Sometimes silence is the loudest statement you can make." By the time Layla arrived at school, the video had already started gaining traction online. By lunchtime, it was everywhere. Social media platforms were flooded with hashtags like #SubwayShowdown and #RespectMatters. The video garnered millions of views, and the story quickly became a hot topic of discussion. The backlash for the woman, later identified as Cynthia Wallace, was swift and unrelenting. Her dismissive words and entitled behavior were condemned by thousands. Strangers on the internet dissected her actions, leaving her social media accounts flooded with criticism. Even her workplace issued a statement, asking her to take an indefinite leave of absence. Cynthia's daughter called her that evening, her voice filled with disbelief. "Mom, what were you thinking? You should have just let her sit." Meanwhile, Layla's quiet courage became a beacon of inspiration. People praised her for standing her ground with dignity and grace. Her story sparked a wave of similar accounts as others shared their own experiences of prejudice and resilience. Layla, initially overwhelmed by the attention, found solace in writing about her experience. Her words, "Sometimes, standing still is the loudest thing you can do," resonated deeply with people all over the world. Cynthia, grappling with the weight of her actions, began to reflect on her behavior. After much hesitation, she reached out to Layla through a mutual acquaintance. Their conversation was brief but meaningful. It wasn't about forgiveness, but about acknowledgement and growth. "I'm sorry," Cynthia said quietly. "I was wrong." Layla's response was equally quiet but profound. "Sometimes, the hardest part is admitting it, thank you." The ripple effects of that one subway ride spread far and wide, pushing others to confront their biases and consider the small ways they could make the world a more respectful place. Layla's story became a reminder that even the smallest acts of defiance can ignite significant change. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained and press the bell icon. Join us for more stories that inspire, challenge, and change perspectives. See you in the next chapter.